I was really hoping that Canadians would be spared all of this nonsense that we see in elections all over the world, that we wouldn't have any election shenanigans. Of course, we all believe that there were some shenanigans in the British Columbia election last fall, but the national election, because it was not counted by those electronic ballot counters, that it was all going to be counted by hand, I was hopeful. I was honestly hopeful that there wouldn't be any notion of election shenanigans, but alas, there are. Welcome to my channel, y'all. I hope you're having a great day. Now, before we get into the video, I just would like to thank my subscribers for putting me over a milestone. And for those of y'all who have not yet subscribed, please do. It doesn't cost anything. It really helps out the channel, and it pushes this information out to more people. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about election shenanigans. There are reports coming out of Ontario which do seem a little suspicious, and we'll get into that in just a bit. But first, let's talk about the longest ballot initiative. By now, most of you have probably heard about the longest ballot initiative. It appears these brothers, these election wreckers and attention seekers in Ontario, put up to 85 or more than 85 names on the ballot in Carleton. That was Pierre Poilievre's riding. Now, they say they've done it for honorable reasons, but does anybody truly believe that a 20-year-old attention seeker from Waterloo University had good intentions? I know I don't, but he and his brother were not satisfied in just causing havoc in Pierre Poilievre's riding. Now they're going after him again in the riding of Battle River Crowfoot. Let's take a look at something that I found on X. Hello, friends and former candidates. In the past few days, we've received dozens and dozens of emails from people asking to join the ballot for the upcoming by-election in Battleford River Crowfoot, Alberta. After losing Carleton, Pierre Poilievre is now seeking to win a seat there. Given the most recent Battleford River Crowfoot results, 81% voted Conservatives, it looks like he'll have no problem succeeding. Given the outpouring of interest, we'll do our best to make a long ballot happen if we can get at least 200 people signing up to be candidates. If you want to join, please email us your full legal name, first name and surname, and your phone number by Monday, May the 12th. If you live in or near the riding, please mention it in the email if you would be willing to help collect nomination signatures for all the candidates. Each candidate needs 100 local voters to nominate them. Why long ballots? We do long ballots because politicians should not be in charge of election rules. There is an obvious conflict of interest. After all, what PM would change a system which brought them to power? Now, I don't live in Battle River Crowfoot, so they're not going to be coming to me and ask for my signature on their nomination forms. But if I did live there, I know what I'd tell them if they came to my door. Get off my property, you POS. And I suggest that everybody in Battle River Crowfoot do the same because, make no mistake, these two are election interferers, or at least they're trying to interfere with the election. Now, I don't know if they had any success in swaying any of the vote, if they were responsible for Pierre Poilievre's loss, but they've made their point, so why are they doing it again? These two socialist a-holes are going after Pierre Poilievre again, and that's just not right. So if anybody out there has contact with these two a-holes, I would suggest you let them know in no uncertain terms, in the strongest possible terms, that you don't appreciate them messing with Canadians and trying to make a mockery of our election systems in Canada. But there's actually more than this that's happened, or at least there's reports of more than this. I was watching a fellow YouTuber, that guy I don't know personally, but I was watching his content, and he has gotten reports from lots of his viewers saying that they actually witnessed election shenanigans. Now, we're going to go and take a look at some clips from his video, but I do want to warn you, this is not evidence that there were shenanigans, and this is not evidence that there was enough shenanigans, if there were shenanigans, that the election results would have changed. So I just want to put that out there, that we should be very careful about how we consume this information. So the first clips that we're going to show here are clips of him reading emails that he received from people who claimed to have witnessed some of these shenanigans, or possibly even have been victims. So take a look at this and then we'll talk about it.
Plenty of emails since my first couple videos about the strange happenings in the 2025 Canadian federal election. And thankfully, to viewers and people who have seen the videos I have done, people have reached out. I have verified these claims, so let us get to them. Here's a crazy one from John. Hi, I got a voter information card. I don't have a Canadian citizenship. I still have my Dutch citizenship, and I've been living in Canada for 37 years. So folks who aren't supposed to vote are getting voter cards. How many other instances are there of that? Here's another. Tina, I cast my vote on the 28th of April for Michael Dancy in the region of Peel. I'd like to bring something to your attention. When I got there to vote, my name is already digitally scratched off the list, like someone had cast a vote in my name before I had the chance to do so. Unfortunately, I did not take note of the workers' names. However, the gentleman at the table was perplexed as he asked me if I had already voted, to which I stated no. I'm here to cast my vote. He then called over a supervisor who was also very confused. She motioned to a third person working at the polling station, and they asked her to sign a voucher form providing a signature for identification. And that we all know that that says if you do this illegally, you do this knowingly, that you voted twice, that there's a penalty for doing so. It's $50,000 and 5 years in prison. So here's another example of somebody in Canada being told that they had already voted. Hi, my name is Pascal. I know two people that went to vote and they were told that they had already voted. Someone else had already voted for them. This is not normal. And I don't know that many people, and two of them were told this. Interesting anecdote. Here's another email I got. Voter fraud possibly discovered. Many people were complaining that their name was already checked off when they arrived to vote. Most were told they must have accidentally requested a mail-in ballot when they registered. They have assured me when I have asked that they didn't request nor did they receive a ballot. This is this person talking, Sherry talking about people she was talking to in line. Some gave up and went home, but others argued it and were allowed to sign an affidavit to be allowed to vote after all. Here is another strange happening sent to me from Wes. When myself and my wife went to vote, the lady told us that they could vote as a couple, but we didn't. And then she was getting her ballots out of the book. They weren't ripping out properly. She said that this had been a problem all day, and so they couldn't be sealed and put in the box. Depending on the rip of the ballot, it's a spoiled ballot. Now, in Canada in 2021, at least 130,000 ballots were spoiled ballots that never got counted.
I think it's worthwhile stating that these are anecdotal. Nothing has been proven. They may or may not be true, but I'm thinking that they sound pretty true. However, he's reading them from emails, so I mean, anybody can put anything down in an email, but I think that it does raise a bit of concern, and maybe they should be investigated. Maybe if these people have had those things happen, they should be reporting them to the police and have the police investigate it. Hopefully, the police will take it seriously and actually do an investigation. But I would say that if anybody thinks that they ran into something suspicious that wasn't right, that caused them to have a doubt that maybe things are on the up and up, maybe somebody had used their name, maybe somebody had already cast a ballot in their name, well, I think that you should go to the police and report that, because that's an identity fraud at the very least and fraud under the Elections Act. So go to the police. If anything suspicious happens, they will give you hopefully the proper advice and hopefully do an investigation on this. So that's my advice regarding this. But there's one more email that he read, which I thought was very interesting. And after he reads it, we're going to talk about it.
Here's another interesting anecdote given to me by a student. Hi, Justin. First-time voter. I voted as a student on April 13th at the BCIT campus. The process was super convenient, and they had way more workers and stations than necessary. But I was surprised by two things. One, the person walking me through the process could barely speak any English. And number two, the important part of this email, she asked me who I was voting for before giving me my paper and envelope to write the candidate name on. I still sealed it up and put it in the ballot box myself, but thought it was a bit weird that she wanted to know.
Well, that is weird. They're not supposed to be asking who the person is voting for. They just give them the papers, have them go behind a little partition and mark the X. And then you fold it and you hand it back to them. Now, another thing that is very suspicious here is he said he put it in an envelope. He sealed it in an envelope and then put it in a box somewhere. Now, maybe there's different procedures at different polling stations, but I have never seen that. I have always seen them fold up the piece of paper, or you fold it up and they rip off a little, tab that says, okay, this ballot has been cast, and then you put it in the box yourself. So he put it in an envelope. Is what was happening there? So maybe I'm making more of this than what there is. Maybe if somebody can share in the comments below, do they have slightly different procedures at different polling stations? Because he shouldn't have been sealing that in an envelope. At least I don't think he should have. I've never seen that done before. You fold up your ballot and you put it in the box, and you do that. And unless you physically can't, and then you hand it to them and they do it. But the only thing that they do is once the ballot is folded up, they rip off that tag so that they know that that ballot was cast. I have some concerns about this. It's just odd. But the next thing I want to show is that there are several boxes that may not have actually been counted. Now, we were hearing on election night that the advanced polls were counted first, probably even 2 hours prior to the polls closing, which was interesting. But here, there's evidence that maybe they weren't counted at all. Maybe something strange happened to them.
This is from Daryl Shelley. I was a scrutineer in Long Range Mountain, St. Stephen's Parish, Stephenville, last night. The advanced polls were nowhere to be found. The counting of those ballots should take place at the polling station in front of the scrutineer as per rules outlined in EC 20045, page 7. I've also spoken to 2 others from 2 other polling stations who experienced the same thing. Where were the advanced polls? No one knows. Update. As one of the commenters pointed out, they counted at the elections office in front of witnesses, which can be candidates themselves or anyone they've appointed. Correct. However, I have asked several times to see the advanced polls. I asked, where are they? I asked, where are they being counted? As did another scrutineer, and they were stonewalled. We were never told where they were counted. No one witnessed them being counted.
So if they have rules, then they should be following the rules, especially since a lot of these scrutineers, well, they're doing it, they're volunteers. And some, even the employees, the people who are hired by Elections Canada, they're not full-time employees. They hire out to do a specific election, so for a little bit of money. And that's very relevant. Matter of fact, there's a guy coming up here that went to work for Elections Canada just for the extra money. And he had a little bit of an issue with what had happened during the election. So let's go take a look at that.
So something is really fishy with what's going on with this election here in Canada. I was supposed to be working for Elections Canada tonight in Durham region, which is just east of Toronto. And so what my job was is when the votes are done at each polling station, they get brought to the office. I was there to make sure all the packages were sealed, all the documentation was in order, so then the votes can be tabulated and counted. Not a single vote in Durham region had been counted yet. None of them had been brought to the office yet. Then I go on my phone and I see CTV declaring the Liberals the winners. It's like, how is this even possible? Here we have, one of the biggest areas just east of the GTA, Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa, Uxbridge. Not a single vote counted. And then, CTV says the Liberals win. And then CBC follows in that. This reeks. How is this even possible? Something's fishy. Something's not right. There's got to be some sort of investigation into this because it's not right.
Now, I would agree that if it's in Ontario, east of Toronto, that might be a little bit suspicious there, because he goes on to say in an interview, I'm not going to play that interview because he says more of the same thing, but he goes on to say in the interview that he spoke to people from other polling stations and they reported the same thing. He goes on to say that it takes a while to set up for counting, and they can't start counting the polls that were cast at that polling station until after the polls closed. So he didn't even have time to set up, or they didn't even have time to set up to count the polls. And now CTV and CBC is announcing that Carney won. So where were they getting all of those polls information? That kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is possible. He does mention also that he spoke to people in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC, and they were saying the same thing. Well, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC, unfortunately, we don't count out here. By the time the Ontario polls closed, it's decided. So I don't really have anything suspicious to think or to say about those polls, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC. But Ontario, that's a different story. Ontario, they're the province that decides who becomes the prime minister, essentially. So if they're declaring that Prime Minister Carney had enough votes prior to votes even being counted, that's a little bit strange. Now, it could be that polls were counted prematurely, and that's why. I don't know. I don't think you're allowed to count the votes until all the polls closed in your area. I could be wrong about that. Again, if I am, put it down in the comments below, but it seems to me the polls closed and then the boxes start getting counted. And as they get counted, then they're called in to the offices for that riding, and then the office for that riding reports it to Elections Canada, and then it goes out to all of the media. So how did the media know who won before any of that happened? Maybe they're quicker in certain areas. I don't know. It does seem a little bit strange. I'm not saying it's evidence of shenanigans, but it is something that maybe should be looked into. I think that actually there should be an automatic investigation after every election, since there has been suspicion. And even if they don't find anything, I think that it would be money well spent to give Canadians that peace of mind, to ensure them that the elections were on the up and up, and everything was good. And it was a close election, so there's going to be lots of recounts and judicial recounts. And the PPC was actually a bit of a spoiler in at least a few ridings as well. I don't think it was enough to sway the overall results, but it did affect some people getting seats in Parliament and some people not getting seats. So that's kind of significant in and of itself. So if, let's say, 5 seats didn't go to the Conservatives, went to the Liberals instead of the Conservatives because of 1,000 votes that went to the PPC, well, that's kind of significant, because it means that not only do the Conservatives get 5 seats more, but the Liberals get 5 seats less. So they're that much closer in seat count. And then with recounts, that could be an issue. So were there shenanigans in this election? I think there's shenanigans in all elections to a certain point. Whether it is enough to sway the results of the elections, that's a different story. But we should be always looking into this. There should be some sort of a commission set up to do investigations on this on a regular basis, so that whenever there's a complaint, there are people who are trained police officers or former police officers who are paid to go and do an investigation like this, so that they can go out and do it and do a proper investigation. And also just to ensure that there's an overall accounting of the election. So they basically do an audit after the election, make sure that everything was done correctly. And during that audit, if they find that there was some shenanigans, then they can refer it to either law enforcement or a body that's set up specifically to investigate after an election. And again, that can be made up of former police officers who want 6 months worth of work or whatever, just to make some ends meet in their old age. That's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you think. Put your comments down below. And while you're at it, please like this video, share with your friends, and on social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell notification so you never miss another video. Also, please join me on Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific time, both on YouTube and Rumble, for my live stream, where you're invited to join in on the conversation. And once Parliament starts to sit again, I will be broadcasting live all of the question periods and some of the committees on my other channel, Calvary Man Live. So tune in for that if you want to see it. There's like 0 subscribers right now because it's just a new channel. But hey, go to that channel, subscribe, and watch those parliamentary procedures live. And then when I do a video on that content, I'll add it on this channel. Finally, if you want to get your Canadian firearms license, I do teach the required courses. So if you reside on Vancouver Island and you want to take a course from me, there are links in the show notes of this video to my website where you can sign up for one. And I am trying to fill up a course for May the 24th and the 25th. So if you're available for that course and you want to take it, again, follow that link and sign up for it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.